Orcas hunt the ocean's most feared predator, rip open its body in under 2 minutes, and eat one single organ before leaving the rest behind. That predator is the great white shark, and the organ orcas are after is the liver, which can make up a huge share of a shark's total body weight. This isn't a rare accident either. It's been filmed, documented, and confirmed with genetic evidence on 3 different continents in the last few decades. And here's the twist that makes this story even stranger: wild orcas have no confirmed fatal attacks on humans anywhere in the scientific record. So today we're answering one specific question. Why do orcas target great white sharks with terrifying precision, but leave us completely alone? By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how an orca overpowers a shark twice its danger level and why that skill spread across the globe. Let's start with the basic biology, because the food chain here isn't what most people assume it is. Great white sharks are usually described as the ocean's apex predator, and in most situations, that's true. But adult orcas sit even higher. They're larger on average, warm-blooded, air-breathing mammals that communicate socially and teach hunting techniques across generations. Great whites are formidable solitary ambush hunters with explosive bursts of speed and devastating bite power, but they hunt alone, and orcas hunt as a team. That single difference, cooperation versus solitude, is the foundation of everything else you're about to see in this video. Great whites can reach speeds fast enough to launch their entire body out of the water while ambushing seals from below, which is exactly why they're feared throughout the ocean. Orcas, by contrast, rely less on a single explosive burst and more on sustained coordination, communication, and shared strategy between multiple animals working together. One shark alone, no matter how fast or powerful, still has to face a family group that has hunted together, communicated together, and refined its technique over years. That's not a fair fight in the traditional sense. It's closer to a wolf pack facing down a lone, powerful predator that has never had to deal with teamwork before. Here's what actually happens when an orca decides to hunt a great white shark, and the precision involved is almost surgical. Orcas don't kill sharks and eat them randomly. In case after documented case, they target the liver with remarkable, repeated accuracy. Shark livers are large, oily, and packed with energy-dense fats, including squalene, and because sharks lack a swim bladder, the liver also helps them stay buoyant. For a hunter, that means one single organ represents a massive, compact reward, far more efficient than consuming the entire animal. Observers have repeatedly found shark carcasses with clean, precise openings and the liver completely missing, while the rest of the body is left largely untouched. That pattern is exactly why scientists interpret these killings as specialized foraging, not random aggression or accidental violence. Think about it from a pure efficiency standpoint. Why would any predator drag around and consume an entire large shark carcass when one organ delivers most of the calories? A full-grown great white can weigh well over a ton, but the liver alone can represent a huge proportion of that total body mass in energy terms. That's the equivalent of skipping an entire meal and going straight for dessert, except this dessert is oily, nutrient-dense, and worth the fight to get to it. Scientists studying these carcasses describe the incisions as remarkably clean, almost surgical, which is a strong signal of learned technique rather than chaotic feeding. Now, here's how an orca actually manages to overpower an animal built like a torpedo made of muscle and teeth. Orcas use several advantages at once: raw size, explosive acceleration, precise body control, and coordinated teamwork between multiple animals. One documented method is to flip the shark upside down, which triggers something called tonic immobility, a trance-like state many sharks and rays fall into when inverted. Once immobilized, a shark that could normally shred flesh with a single bite becomes dramatically easier to control, pin, and open up. Orcas also use force concentration, ramming, rolling, and gripping a shark while using their own body mass to keep it permanently off balance. In 1997, near California's Farallon Islands, observers recorded one of the earliest modern sightings of a killer whale killing a white shark in open water. Decades later, in South Africa, drone and boat footage gave scientists a far more detailed look at exactly how this predation actually unfolds. In June 2023, in Mossel Bay, a male orca known as Starboard was filmed killing a white shark and removing its liver with startling speed. Reports from that event described the entire kill taking under 2 minutes once contact was fully established, which points to practice skill, not chance. That speed matters enormously, because it suggests this isn't experimental behavior tried once. It looks like a technique these orcas have genuinely mastered. Tonic immobility itself is a strange biological quirk. Once a shark is flipped upside down, its muscles essentially freeze in a trance-like, unresponsive state. Researchers still aren't entirely sure why this reflex exists in sharks and rays at all, but for an orca, it's the perfect exploit. An animal that would normally thrash violently and bite in self-defense becomes completely still, giving the orca total control over positioning and timing. That's the difference between a fair fight and a calculated ambush, and it's exactly why these kills can happen so quickly once contact begins. So why do orcas go through all this effort specifically for great white sharks instead of easier prey? The clearest reason is the massive energy payoff. A shark liver is calorie-dense, rich in fat, and relatively simple to consume once the shark has been opened. Compare that to hunting a seal or a school of fish. Both require repeated effort for a smaller reward, while one shark liver can sustain a hunting group for a much longer stretch. There's also learned prey specialization at play. Orca populations worldwide are famous for culturally transmitted hunting traditions passed down through family groups. Once a hunting technique is discovered and rewarded with a big meal, it can spread and become part of a group's long-term behavior. Sharks also share predictable anatomical vulnerabilities, including tonic immobility, and that same conspicuous, oversized liver, which makes them easier to exploit once a predator understands the pattern. Killing a large shark also removes a competitor from a productive feeding area, clearing space at the very top of the local food web. There's also a broader pattern at play here worth understanding. Orcas as a species are generalists, but individual local populations often behave like specialists instead. One group might specialize almost entirely in fish, another in marine mammals like seals, and another in rays or sharks specifically, depending on what's locally profitable. Once a profitable technique like shark hunting is discovered by one group, it can be taught, copied, and reinforced until it becomes a defining regional tradition. That's the difference between an accident and a culture, and it's exactly what appears to be happening with shark hunting orca populations around the world. South Africa became the most famous stage for this entire rivalry, and two specific orcas are largely responsible for that reputation. Port and Starboard, two adult male orcas named for their distinctive collapsed dorsal fins, became infamous for preying on sharks along the South African coast. Carcasses of seven-gill sharks and great white sharks began washing ashore with the exact same signature, liver removed, and the rest of the body barely touched. But the most dramatic evidence wasn't the kills themselves. It was what happened to the sharks that survived and simply chose to leave. Researchers studying white shark aggregation sites like Gansby and areas near False Bay documented something remarkable: sharks rapidly vacating entire areas after orca appearances. Long-term sighting and tracking data strongly supports a genuine flight response. In plain terms, great whites appear to know that these specific orcas mean danger. That single fact reshapes the classic image of the great white as the unchallenged ruler of its coastline. In some tracked cases, sharks left known feeding grounds within hours of an orca sighting and didn't return for weeks, even though the food supply hadn't changed at all. That kind of rapid, sustained avoidance is a textbook fear response. The same pattern seen when smaller predators flee an area after a larger one moves in. It shows that great white sharks, despite their reputation, are capable of recognizing and avoiding a threat that outranks them, rather than blindly defending their usual territory. For a species so often portrayed as fearless, that flight response is one of the most quietly revealing details in this entire story. And this isn't only a dramatic story, it's an ecological one too, because white sharks themselves regulate the ecosystems underneath them. When white sharks disappear from an area, even temporarily, the effects can ripple downward through the entire local food web. Scientists studying South African waters have argued that orca predation risk contributes to a genuinely shifting predator landscape across the whole coastline. But researchers are also careful to warn against oversimplifying this. Fishing, prey shifts, bycatch, and broader human impacts all affect white shark populations too. So while dramatic shark disappearances after orca visits are real, claiming orcas alone explain every shark decline everywhere would be going too far. It's worth remembering that white sharks were already dealing with pressure from commercial fishing, accidental bycatch, and habitat change long before this rivalry became famous. Orca predation adds a new dramatic layer on top of those existing pressures rather than acting as the single cause of every shark population shift. Good science on this topic separates the two, acknowledging a real and measurable orca effect while still crediting the older, slower human-caused pressures that were already in motion. That kind of careful separation is exactly what makes this story credible instead of just another viral ocean legend. This phenomenon isn't limited to South Africa either. It's now been confirmed on multiple continents using completely independent evidence. The 1997 Farallon Islands sighting off California gave researchers their first modern glimpse of this behavior in the wild. In Australia, genetic evidence published in 2025 confirmed killer whale predation on a white shark and strongly supported the same selective liver-targeting pattern seen elsewhere. And in the Gulf of California, researchers documented a specialized orca group repeatedly preying on juvenile white sharks, with aerial footage showing the same inversion and liver removal technique. Taken together, these cases prove shark hunting orcas aren't a myth, a single anecdote, or a one-region anomaly. They're a real, repeatable hunting strategy. So why, after all of this, do orcas never do the same thing to humans, despite centuries of contact in the same waters? The most accurate answer is that there are no confirmed fatal attacks by wild orcas on humans, even though dangerous incidents have occurred in captivity. Captivity changes an orca's social structure, stress levels, and behavioral context so dramatically that it shouldn't be treated as a model for wild behavior at all. The leading explanation for the difference comes down to prey preference, culture, and simple cost-benefit logic built up over generations. Orcas hunt what their family groups already know how to hunt, and many populations are highly traditional, sticking closely to a specific learned diet. Humans have simply never become part of that learned prey menu, no matter how much time we've spent in the ocean. There's also a size and reward mismatch. A floating human isn't remotely comparable in fat yield to a large shark liver or a seal. And finally, humans are strange, tool-using, boat-associated animals, which likely makes us more of a curiosity to a wild orca than recognized prey. So the honest answer isn't that orcas are somehow kinder than sharks, it's that shark predation fits an evolved, culturally reinforced strategy that human predation simply doesn't. It's also worth remembering that orcas have had centuries of documented contact with human boats, swimmers, and coastal communities without a single confirmed wild fatality on record. That's a remarkable statistic for an animal capable of taking down one of the ocean's largest and most dangerous predators in under 2 minutes. It suggests that recognition, not raw capability, is the real barrier between us and their established prey list. If humans ever became a reliable, energy-rich, repeatable food source the way sharks and seals are, that calculation could theoretically shift, but nothing in the historical record suggests that's happened. There are a few myths worth clearing up before we finish, because this story gets exaggerated constantly online. It's not accurate to say orcas are wiping out every great white shark on Earth. That claim goes far beyond what the evidence actually shows. It's also too simple to blame every single shark disappearance on one coastline entirely on port and starboard specifically. Another common exaggeration is the idea that orcas kill sharks purely for fun, but the evidence points overwhelmingly toward efficient, profitable feeding, not meaningless cruelty. One widely shared claim even describes 17 sharks killed in a single day in one South African episode, but those were 7-gill sharks, not great whites, and the details matter. Mixing up species, locations, and timelines is exactly how a real, well-documented phenomenon turns into an exaggerated internet legend within a few viral reposts. The actual, verified story doesn't need exaggeration to be impressive. 2 apex predators, one of them hunting the other with surgical precision, is already remarkable on its own. Staying accurate about which species, which location, and which specific orcas were involved is what separates real marine science from clickbait retellings of the same footage. So here's the real, evidence-backed synthesis behind this entire rivalry. Orcas target great white sharks because certain populations learn that sharks are vulnerable, energy-rich prey, whose livers offer an enormous nutritional payoff for very little risk. They can immobilize a shark, open it with startling precision, and force even the ocean's most feared predator to abandon entire hunting grounds. They don't treat humans the same way, because we were never part of their established prey culture, and we offer very little reward compared to the risk involved. This rivalry isn't cartoon hatred between 2 movie monsters. It's specialized predation built on intelligence, anatomy, and knowledge passed down through generations of orca culture. And that's genuinely one of the most extraordinary displays of animal intelligence anywhere in the ocean, right alongside the smartest primates on land. What makes it even more remarkable is that this behavior had to be discovered, refined, and passed down before it could ever become this consistent across regions. Somewhere, at some point, a single orca or a small group figured out that flipping a shark and targeting its liver was worth the effort, and that knowledge spread from there. That's culture in the truest sense, a skill invented by individuals and preserved by a species smart enough to teach it to the next generation. There's one more angle to this story we haven't touched yet, involving exactly how great white sharks are adapting their own behavior in response. That adaptation is already changing where great whites hunt along entire coastlines, and it's reshaping marine ecosystems in ways researchers are still tracking right now. Check out the next video on this channel to see exactly how great white sharks are responding to this new threat at the top of the food chain.